Tucker Whitman.
Here.
Andy Dennison.
Present.
Ben Vitale.
Present.
Grant Kyle.
Present.
Paul Pinckney.
Here.
Elaine McNabb Coleman.
Present.
Joseph Forrest.
Here.
Terry Baxter.
Aye.
Joseph Bennett.
Here.
Frank Reginelli.
Here.
Patrick Mahonik is excused. Timothy Lattimore.
Here.
Michael Didio.
Here.
Ryan Foley.
Present.
Keith Batman.
Here. So we could rise for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Chris Novak, husband of Cayuga County mental health employee Michelle Novak. He was a New York State Corrections officer for 20 years. Olga Lucky served as civil service for 35 years, both as executive secretary to the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of proclamations. The first one, I think, is a surprise. Lisa Cooper, are you here? Would you come forward? No, if you don't want to come forward, you may stand on your chair. It's your choice.
Sheila, is the microphones on?
Is this one on? Is it on now? I think it was on. Is it on? That was on before. It's on.
Now it's on.
It's on. So he's high. Okay. So, this is a surprise for Lisa, and the recognition from her colleagues, many of whom are here. So, whereas Lisa Cooper was appointed to the position of town clerk in Sterling in January 1996, and has been the town of Sterling's go-to person for 21 years. Lisa was elected in November 1996. She became a certified municipal clerk in July 2005 and went on to earn her master's clerk status in November 2009. Whereas in addition to serving her community as town clerk, Lisa serves as court clerk for the town of Sterling and has also been very active in the Cayuga County Clerks Association throughout all of these years, and serving as a mentor and role model to new town clerks. Whereas Lisa serves as the town's record management officer and was successful in obtaining a New York State Records Management grant for the town's records in 2013. Lisa enjoys challenges, and she can be counted on to tackle any task in order to assist the town supervisor, the board members, the code enforcement officer, the assessor, and all community members who visit her office to ask for her help. Whereas in addition to all of her responsibilities, Lisa organizes and coordinates the annual rabies clinic and annual Easter egg roll. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Keith Batman, Chairman of the Cayuga County Legislature, Tucker Whitman, Legislator District 1, and fellow legislators, do hereby proclaim our gratitude and urge the residents of our county to join us in recognition of Lisa Cooper Day in Cayuga County, Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. Did you want me in the picture, sir? Yeah. Charlene, did you want to say a few words?
I do. I do.
Lisa. Lisa, I've known you since 2004 when I was elected the town clerk of Mentz. During my learning curve, you played an important part guiding me with activities I didn't know anything about. If I didn't know how to do something or didn't know how to answer a question, one call and you were right there and found out the answer. So you helped me along the way. You have taught and helped many town clerks in your years of service to Sterling. You instilled professionalism into the position. You've encouraged us. You've encouraged us to do our best, and you're a great role model for us, veterans clerks as well as new clerks. You've told us at many a town clerk meetings, I'm only a phone call away. We, the town clerks of Cayuga County, would like to congratulate you on your accomplishments and are proud to support you, Lisa Cooper, as president of New York State Town Clerks Association.
I just want to, real quick, I've known Lisa for about 20 years. In my former jobs, she was the go-to person I called if I needed to know anything about the town of Sterling, any kind of facts, if there were grants, who did this and who did that. It was Lisa Cooper, and she helped me all along the way. And I just want to say a huge congratulations to her. And I know this was a surprise for her tonight. That was one of my favorite things, but I love her, and she's going to do a great job, and New York State is lucky to have her.
I know. Okay, you caught me off guard here. All I have to say is that the town clerks in Cayuga County, we always work together. We don't look at political lines at all, and I don't care what political party you were. I learned from the best from some of the seasoned clerks that are in this county, and we just all work together. We're all trying to do the best job that we can for our residents, and I'm speechless. Thank you.
So could I ask now for the family of Bud Bay to come forward?
You want us all?
I want you all. Again, if you're more comfortable, you may stand in place on the chair. It's whatever makes you more comfortable. So, Joe, do you want to join us? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to have him.
So we have a proclamation for Bud Bay, and I'll just say before I say that, I worked with Bud for a number of years. He was supervising Genoa, and for a while I was supervising Scipio, and then we also worked on and I can't remember if that's when we were supervisors or something else, but we met with Southern Cayuga every year to talk about the budget. I guess that was supervisor work, but he was always a joy to work with. So, whereas Bud Bay was born on February 3rd, 1931, to Gertrude Walters Bay and Claude S. Bay of Cortland. Bud graduated from Cortland High School and then enlisted in the U.S. Navy, where he proudly served from 1950 to 54 on the USS Rehoboth. From there, Bud was employed by the Moravia School District for 38 years, most of them as their transportation supervisor. Bud served as the town of Genoa supervisor for 7 years, and then on the Cayuga County Legislature for 13 years after that. Bud also was a member of the Oddfellows, the Moravia VFW Honor Guard, American Legion, Korean War Veterans, and his final membership, one he greatly valued, the United Church of Genoa. Whereas to all who knew Bud, they will miss his relentless sense of humor and his willingness to help with whatever anyone needed. He enjoyed his family most, especially his 5 grandchildren and his great-grand-dog. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Keith M. Batman, Chairman of the Cayuga County Legislature, and fellow elected officials do hereby proclaim our gratitude and urge the residents of our county to join us in recognition of Claude Bud Kenneth Bay Day in Cayuga County, Tuesday, June 27th, honoring his commitments to his family, his friends, and to his community. And thank you, Bud.
I will just say, I don't necessarily need the microphone, but thank you. Dad would have loved this. And I know it's a thankless job that you all do, being here, and certainly all of you especially too. So, thank you. This was very, very sweet.
Thank you.
The following proclamations have already been presented. June 10th Day in Cayuga County, June 17th, 2017. St. Baldrick's Day, June 11th, 2017. The Wall That Heals, June 1st through June 4th, 2017. And Cayuga County salutes Justin Murillo, Eagle Scout, June 10th, 2017.
Thank you. So at this point, we have a presentation from Joe Stefko from CGR. If I could ask you to come, and I think we have a little PowerPoint. Great.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you tonight. Just to give you a high-level background, a couple of months ago, the county issued a request for proposals to conduct what you call a comprehensive organizational assessment for Cayuga County. And we had an opportunity maybe about a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now, to meet with a committee that I know included some members of the legislature, some members, some department heads, some folks from county staff, and share with them how we would go about this project, recommend an approach. And I wanted to share that approach with all of you this evening. I'll do so in maybe 5 minutes or so, and to the extent that you all have questions or comments that you'd like me to respond to, I'll make sure to reserve some time for that. But let me just, first of all, introduce my colleague Pat Smith, who's with me tonight, sitting over there on the legislature's left. What we heard from you in your initial RFP, the scope as you envisioned it for this project, were really a number of kind of critical themes that certainly Cayuga County is not the only one voicing. We're hearing these themes. There's a common element here with your peers across the state. First of all, that you are looking for what you call actionable opportunities to streamline, to refocus, and to reorganize. You think about some of the fiscal and service pressures that you all are dealing with on a day-to-day and certainly a fiscal year-to-fiscal year basis, that your revenue is really constrained to a few major sources, that when you look at the overall fiscal and service ecosystem in which you're trying to make decisions, that there's no single revenue option. There's also no single expenditure reduction option that can fully address the challenges that you face, challenges that seem to intensify year over year. That you've already done some work as a county, some good work, to address the cost side of the ledger, but that we're seeing these recurring cost increases year over year that are really, it's almost a one step forward, 1 or 2 steps backwards. So you laid out a vision for this project that is really predicated on, let me go back one slide here, really predicated on finding cost-cutting inroads through a really detailed, intentional look at some of your fundamental organizational issues. The ways in which you're structured, the way your departments, your staff are structured to deliver essential services, to identify areas where, as a county organization, maybe you're siloed in ways that drive inefficiencies or inhibit productivity. And you wanted to look at opportunities to potentially reorganize, to combine or connect departments and functions in ways that leverage synergies, that can allow for increases in efficiencies, economies of scale. So the project objectives, as we articulated them in our proposal and CGR's proposal to the county, really were fourfold. Number one, to begin our work by doing an in-depth, really intentional, detailed existing conditions review. It's one of the things we do at the beginning of every project of this type, is really spend some time getting our arms around what services do you deliver, what functions operate here in the county, and how do you do each of those. Secondly, and this of course directly connects to the scope that you originally envisioned in the RFP, was to identify policies, procedures, what factors exist today that might be inhibiting your productivity or your effectiveness or your efficiency. And then thirdly, to use that as the pivot point to then start to ask some of the what-if questions. What might be opportunities to reorganize, to redirect, to allocate resources potentially in different ways? What could the impact of those changes be? And then finally, to work with you to prioritize the next steps. I know one of the things that was envisioned in your initial RFP, and certainly one of the things that we're deeply committed to at CGR, is making sure that our recommendations aren't academic, they're not theoretical, but that they really are actionable. I've included, I'm going to skip over the next couple of slides, a little background on our organization, on our team, on our areas of expertise, but suffice it to say that, number one, I feel very strongly that our team is not just a good fit, but probably the best fit to do this kind of work. We frankly, not only have we been doing this kind of work for 102 years here in the state of New York, but we do more work with local governments, from the county government to the smallest municipality, than really any other similar organization in the state of New York. We have some key principles that govern our work on a project like this. Number one, that there's no substitute for objective, fact-based data collection. That's why we spend those first few months really getting our arms around what services are delivered and how you deliver them. That we don't see ourselves as the decision makers here. We really are kind of strategic information providers. You ultimately, as county leaders, elected officials, department heads, county line staff, you all, this is your county, these are your communities, you need to be put in a position to make the decision that makes the most sense for you. In some cases, that may be the decision that saves the most money. In other cases, that may be a decision that doesn't necessarily save money, but improves the quality or scope or scale of a service that you provide. If we do our job, if our CGR team does our job correctly, by the time you're making decisions on, be they individual county services or functions that are carried out here in the county organization, they'll be as informed with objective data information as they can possibly be. Let me just spend a minute talking you through methodologically how we have proposed approaching this project. Think about it in two basic phases. Number one, as I've already mentioned, we would call it our baseline or our existing conditions phase. We're going to really get our arms around, document, evaluate what the county already does, how it does it. Not every county delivers the same services in the same way in New York State. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but planning departments are different in every county. Clerk's offices are different in every county. And what really makes a project like this powerful for you is that it's tailored to you. So we don't put a kind of a mold on top of the way you deliver your services. We're really going to interview folks. We're going to look at organizational documents, and we're going to really deeply understand how you deliver what you deliver. What we're really going to try to do is identify linkages between and among departments. Where do we have common functions playing out behind the scenes in two or more departments? Where do we have gaps that may be opportunities to enhance our capacity, strengthen our efficiency? We're going to document those for you. And then as we pivot to the second phase of our work, really work with you to identify, evaluate, and critically important, prioritize those alternatives. Help you understand the answers to those what-if questions. What if we approached this particular service or this particular function in a different way? And where we end up leaving you, ultimately, is with clear information that allows you to prioritize, number one, the level of impact along the left-hand side, those high-impact projects that have the potential to really drive cost savings. And on the other axis, a sense of what the implementation process, the level of complexity is there. Ideally, what we find are high-impact, easy implementation projects, right? That's our focus. That's really where we can hit pay dirt. But at the same time, we're going to find opportunities, I don't doubt it for a moment, that might be low impact, but easy to implement. What we don't want to do is really focus your attention on low impact, really difficult to implement projects. Time's of the essence. Your jobs don't get any easier year over year. The decisions get tougher, and the fiscal margin for error gets narrower. So in this kind of setup, what we're really trying to do is help you prioritize those opportunities and those decisions going forward. And then ultimately what we will do is report out to you with a final, basically, modeling and analysis of options. We really go to great pains to make sure that that presentation takes place in a standard format. So we are really documenting for you the current state of a service or a function, an internal function, as our team sees it, articulating for you what that problem or issue really is, and then providing for you a review of the alternative or set of alternatives as we see them, with some sense of what the impacts are. Are they, is there a service impact? Is it a service sustainability impact? Is it an opportunity to save money and ease county financial challenges? And then at the bottom of the slide, of course, you see what this county would ultimately be empowered with. And if I were to sum it up into three things, number one, it's really a clear documentation of what our team sees as the productivity and efficiency pinch points, for lack of a better phrase. Where are there opportunities to improve, if we want to look at that from a positive standpoint? Secondly, this preliminary review of alternatives for addressing those efficiency and productivity pinch points. And finally, a prioritization of where we go from here. So if we're handing that baton to you at the end, what are you positioned to do? What follows our work here at CGR? Of course, it's really an opportunity for you as leaders of the county. Again, we're not the decision makers here. It's an opportunity for you all as leaders of the county to identify which of those opportunities you want to prioritize, which ones you want to move forward with, to develop formal implementation plans around them, to begin that dialogue, or hopefully continue that dialogue within the county organization with all the other stakeholders, both inside and outside of this building. The dialogue that's so critically important to moving forward changes on any sort of public service. And then, of course, at the end of the day, implement. Because as I said before, our real passion here is developing for you recommendations and plans that are actionable and will make a positive difference for the county. The last slide I've included in your packet. I'm happy to talk to any or all of these, but I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of at the large municipal or county-wide level, the sort of work that our organization has been involved with over the last 2, 3, 4 years. This is just a sample of projects that, in our perspective, are similar in scale, scope, and general approach to what we've proposed to do for you all here in the county. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions that folks might have.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Mr. Lattimore.
Have you studied the type of government that we have versus, let's say, a countywide elected executive?
Have we studied that?
Yes.
We have. We've worked on a number of different charter revisions around the state over the years. If that's something that you wanted to have on the table as part of this project, that's something that we could look at. We had scoped this project to be less a kind of governmental structure and more a service internal process review. But certainly we've been involved in a number of projects where form and structure of the overarching, basically the overarching governance model is up for discussion, certainly.
Other questions?
Does your studies just specifically speak to employment and organization of employment, or also to space use and department structure as a physical thing?
Yeah, it's really
building or infrastructure.
Yeah, it's not just employment. It really is more. It's employment. It's staff allocation. It's the structure of workload and work processes across departments. It is less on the physical plant side. We are more on the kind of the management and financial and service delivery consulting end. We're not an architectural and engineering firm, so we wouldn't be looking at the utilization of your physical plant. What we would look at as part of a review here of say your, let's say a streets and highway department, what we would typically do is we would look at the space and look at capital needs of that space and the extent to which pending capital investment needs may, absent any other changes, squeeze out your ability to maintain a current staffing level, which you may need to deliver a constant level of service. So that's how that component would interact with this, but it is much bigger than just how many staff do you have and how could you reduce the number of staff. I mean, that's absolutely not the premise from which we start.
Ms. Whitman.
If this body told you to go ahead and start tomorrow, how long would it take before we were at the implementation stage?
We've scoped the study in such a way that it would be our expectation that by roughly the end of the calendar year, you would have a final report from us. And I think that final report, assuming that you maintain that momentum, by the first quarter of 2018, you would be in a position to make decisions on which opportunities you wanted to pursue, how to prioritize them, which may require some upfront resources to get them moving. But that, just kind of a broad timeline, I would see that as eminently achievable. By the same token, I'd also point out that to the extent that we find opportunities, even when we're doing our baseline review, as I said at the outset of my presentation, we understand doing this work all over the state that time's of the essence, and you don't want us to sit on a clear opportunity for 4 or 5 months just so it can show up in the final report. So where we see opportunities like that, we're going to bring them to the fore as early in the study as they materialize.
Any other questions?
Do you use working groups with different department heads and legislators to gather? That's how you're gathering all the info. It's direct from employees, not top-down approach.
Yep. Yeah, we will tap into the county organization at a variety of different levels. One of the things we were very clear about in our proposal to the county was that as part of the initial baseline review, we'll be interviewing department heads. I think we have something like 30 or 35 interviews contemplated in that first phase. We have traditionally used working groups once we get to that options phase because we find that the deeper you go within each of the departments, within each of the kind of the sub-organizations of the county, if you will, the richer the data set is when we're trying to think outside of the box and address challenges with new ways of, with new approaches. So typically we'll have working groups that will be focused on related service areas. Maybe we'll have a kind of a general back office services area. We'll have a physical services, physical plant and services area. Oftentimes with counties or larger cities, we'll have a public safety working group. And again, those are intended to not only better inform our research and analysis of alternatives and options, but also to gain a broader sense of buy-in from other stakeholders within the county organization.
Dr. Sefcoff, thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll be taking up this, the project later in the agenda. So thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Sefcoff. And I should point out, Joe, you guys are welcome to stay, but there's, you don't have to. I just want to make that clear. Oh, thank you. I thought I would skip to the minutes. Yeah, forgive me. This is our public to be heard section. Are there any legislators who would like anyone from their districts to be recognized? Mr. Lattimore.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just stay here, but it was reported in the Post the other day that Foxconn is going to spend $10 billion in U.S. expansion. So with economic development being on that board and on Capusa board, I put up I wanted to read into the minutes a 5-page thing, but in a matter of time, I gave it to Amanda earlier. But it's just an update on Reshore America, Advantage Auburn, Manufacturing Smart Logistics, Enterprise Model, and Companion Rev Plan, Clean Energy Community Program, Employment and Capitalization Metrics.
Okay.
So at your leisure, you can read the minutes.
Thanks.
But it's 50,000 new jobs.
Okay, minutes for approval.
Wait, let me make sure there are no people. Is anyone from the public who wants to speak that hasn't spoken with their legislator in advance, but would still like to? Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Minutes for approval, May 23rd, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be relatively brief because I really appreciated the time a couple weeks ago to address the body in relation to the college budget. But first, I want to introduce one of our college trustees, Stephanie Hutchinson, who also happens to be chair of the college's finance committee. We're in the conclusion of kind of ending obviously we ended our academic year last month with commencement and going through the summer process. But it also is the end of kind of our year when it comes to our trustees. The way that we set up our particular calendar, the new year, if you will, starts for us in July. And this year our trustees have done a great deal of work with administration on reviewing sort of our structures. And one of the changes that was recently made was to go from essentially a 4-committee system structure to a 2-committee system structure. So that new process will be implemented in July. And the goal of it really was when we looked at the different committees within the structure of the trustees, there was a standalone personnel committee, a standalone finance and audit committee, and a standalone buildings and grounds committee. And when you benchmark that against the fiduciary responsibility of college trustees, they all interact with finance, they all interact with capital funds and regulations and so forth. So we really felt that it was a little more efficient for us to be able to combine those into sort of one finance and audit type structure. So that new system will be launched, if you will, in July. In addition, we wanted to redefine sort of our governance and planning committee to make sure that explicitly states that committee has oversight related to the other aspects of the institution in enrollment management, student affairs, and academic affairs, and aligning those back up to the SUNY guidelines for the roles of trustees when it comes to making sure that everything's in place. So I thought that was an important update for you all. In addition, our trustees recently passed, and we believe it's the first in the institution's history, the designation of trustee emeritus for John Karpinski. And it was something that the trustees felt very strongly about. Certainly I supported a great deal. And we were able to recognize John last week at an event and be able to kind of share that with he and Nancy and their family. I know that the county had celebrated him earlier this year, which was wonderful, but this was the trustees' way to be able to recognize, nearly 3 decades of service to the institution. So that was something that we're very, very proud to do and very honored for his service and commitment to Cayuga Community College. You know, I've mentioned throughout the series of updates throughout the year, we continually are looking at developing, you know, and identifying kind of facility improvement projects both on the Fulton and Auburn campus. One of the projects we're actually scheduled to try to get done later this summer, and that is to install a new front sign on Franklin Street on the Auburn campus. You know, our brand has changed, our identity continues to evolve, and we feel as though it's time to be able to update the sign that's been there for a number of years to reflect that brand and to ultimately help start to rebuild, if you will, sort of the front door to the college campus. So we're excited about that. The trustees last week had reviewed the design, and it's something that we're excited that'll hopefully be in place by the time the fall semester begins. And, you know, lastly, you know, in front of you tonight from Ways and Means Committee is certainly the 2017-18 budget. I won't go in great detail with it, but we think the budget is a responsible one. We think it's one that's essentially, well, we know it's essentially flat from last year. It's actually slightly down, about $15,000. It represents only a 1% tuition increase, and in essence, the ask to you is for your support of 1.5%, approximately $44,000, will allow us to keep our tuition rate at that point and make sure that we continue to be as affordable as possible. And I just would ask the body for your support tonight for the college budget. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Questions? Mr. Lattimore.
Mr. President, you took out a full-page ad. Would you just speak a moment about that?
Yeah, one of our efforts over the next several months is to partner, if you will, with a citizen to be able to celebrate a great deal of the accomplishments that we've been experiencing at the college, and also to be able to give testimonial to what we think is important. And this past weekend, one of our editorials that we were able to put out was about manufacturing, local manufacturing, and how the college is committed to being able to serve and support a pipeline to the manufacturer needs in this community. And, you know, it's actually a tremendous example for the role that I believe community colleges play, which is you have employers that are saying that they have needs and that they want a ready and able workforce to meet those particular needs. You have a higher ed institution who provides training at all different levels, from non-credit to certificate to degree seeking. And those particular programs are available for students, whether you be a traditional age out of high school, whether you be a returning adult learner, someone who's looking to make career transfers. In addition to that, though, which is particularly special, I think, about that article and about what we're doing, is we are also creating a pipeline that starts all the way in 9th grade with our partnership with the Auburn and Large City School District for our P-TECH program. So, you know, that is a great example of how we worked with manufacturers in this community to identify their needs. We worked with them to develop a curriculum that they're excited about. We had a great deal of support across the industry, and now we've been able to deliver not only in offerings, but also with trying to create a captive audience, if you will, from high school that allows people not only to take courses on a pursuit for their associate's degree, but it also provides an avenue for exposure to an industry that they may not otherwise have experienced. And that's one of the powers to be able to partner with local high schools, is because we're able to introduce people to great paying jobs, great industries in our community, and you know, perhaps their own pathway to success. So we're going to do a series of them on a number of different topics, and we'll look forward to continue sharing with the community.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be taking up the budget later in the agenda. Okay, committee reports or individual legislators' reports. Mr. Didio.
I sit on the Alcohol and Substance Abuse Subcommittee of the Community Service Board, and currently we have 2 vacant chairs. We have a number of very educated, knowledgeable people that sit on the Alcohol and Substance Abuse Subcommittee, and it's imperative that we continue with each month. There are several different projects that come out. And with the critical addiction problems that we face, and of course across the state, across the country. So it is a committee that meets once a month, and the first Wednesday of each month. Currently, we meet down at the Courier Building on Wright Avenue, the Unity House. They were very supportive of us obtaining their conference room. So if anyone, and it's only an hour, and lunch is provided, so if you have some interest in it, you can come down and sit for the month of July, next week, in that particular meeting. And maybe you'll be surprised, and maybe you'll come on as a member. Any other questions, you can make contact with me. Thank you.
So, Mike, if someone is interested, should they get in contact with you for specifics?
Yeah, probably at this time it would be. They can make contact with Michael Green.
Okay.
He's the chair of the Community Service Board. Ray Bazzari, they make contact with Ray.
Okay, great.
But we don't want to lose that person if there's interest, so we have several people, but you can make contact with me if it's right up here. You can call Sheila, and I'll get back to that person. And
Great.
then we'll lead him or she in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, any other reports from legislators or comment?
I just wanted to make a comment. Legislator Didio and I serve on the steering committee for the watershed rules and regulations. This past week we had 2 public meetings. One was held at BOCES on Monday. The second was at Moravia High School on Wednesday. I understand the Moravia was well attended. I know BOCES was well attended. I was there. And that was our public input session. So I'll be updating this body regularly, or Mr. Didio will be also, so that we can understand what's going on moving forward with the watershed.
Great, thank you. Ms. Lattimore.
Just to continue on water quality, you and I attended the meeting in Aurora in regards to hydrilla. And it was interesting to see what, I mean, I'd like to see Owasco take an attitude of using some chemicals, some dredging, some mats, and have us be the test bed of all the Finger Lakes.
And maybe I'll just, since Ms. Eisner brought that up, I'll take a moment, so I don't have to just backtrack, because I'm going to mention that in my report. But since it's come up, I'll mention it. So there is a path forward there. As I reported, I think at our special meeting, they will not require us to front or put up any money, which is good. But the better thing, I think, and I think you'd agree, Tim, is that the Army Corps is doing a much more aggressive program than we could have afforded to do. They not only are treating the infestation, but they're treating and monitoring about another acre or so, on a half acre on each side, as well as up Paynes and Little Creek. So, and then with an active plan, and then they're doing substantial monitoring, initially twice a week, and then as the project unfolds, once a week, and doing this for the balance of the treatment program, which is going to be most of the summer into the fall. So it's a very impressive effort, and as I say, a much larger effort than any of us could have done. So it's great that they've stepped forward. Tim?
I'd like to thank Steve Lynch. I had to leave the Moravia one, but the presentation that I did here before I had to join you in Aurora, Steve did an excellent job with the presentation, and I heard he did an excellent job at both.
Yeah, the one in Auburn was excellent, too. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other? Ms. Whip?
Just to keep the water topic going, I just want to express my disapproval in our governor. or sometimes it feels like New York City's governor. I vetoed the added funding for properties along the lake that have been affected by the flooding. Pretty rough. There's a lot of people that could have used that funding. It just feels like a slap in the face to upstate.
Mr. Vitale.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've reported a couple times on the capital working group, and we actually met last month, and I've been continuing to work with some of our department heads in planning and buildings and grounds, and I'm hoping to maybe this month or next month start bringing some things to our committees in regards to this building. First of all, I'd like to thank the employees and everybody that's been patient having to deal with some of the issues we have in this building. But I mentioned it a couple of times, and last time I talked about this, I said we really need to make a decision before the end of this year. And I'm hoping that we can start bringing some information forward to the legislature so that we can make a decision and a plan for going forward before the end of this year. So legislators can start looking forward to starting seeing some of that information hopefully shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lattimore.
Just to pick up on building and grounds, it was reported in the paper, I don't know how true it is, that there's an auction for $1.7 million for the mall. I mean, it's a pretty good buy. Just throwing that out there.
Chip in.
In case you gotta move, then.
Any other reports or? Okay, thank you.
In case we gotta move.
I think am I next? I am. Okay. I have several things tonight, but I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. As you may remember, as part of the solar projects that we've been looking at in cooperation with the Central New York Regional Planning Board, one of the potential projects was placement of solar on government buildings. A number of towns, villages, and us participated in those studies. That's moving to the next phase, which is the more serious investigation of the viability of those locations. And so we'll be putting that through committee, beginning with planning this month. It requires us to sign some agreements, no contracts, but it requires us to sign some agreements to try to move forward with this study. So that will be processing through. I've had 3 more shared services meetings this month. One with the City of Auburn and some of the donut towns. And I met with the village mayors, which is why I wasn't at Ways and Means this month. And then we had a community listening session today that was not, I think there were only 2 people there, but from that came at least one very interesting idea that we'll be pursuing. So that continues to move forward. Even though there's been no decision made, I want to stress that, it becomes increasingly clear that we probably won't have a plan this year. We'll probably have the plan in 2018. It's still possible for this year, but just a kind of a forewarning, we'd be surprised if we're to the point where we're ready to really submit a plan by August 1st for your consideration. Ms. Lattimore.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't make the meeting today, but I did reach out to Seneca County in regards to maybe bundling our energy buys, our oil and electric. Talked to Mr. Shipley, you might want to touch base with him. And I had a small conversation with their manager, but I think that we should also look in sharing services with our fellow counties.
Yeah, that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Yep, good. So if you can get to me later and let me know the nature of that conversation, who it was, and what's the expected follow-up, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, we've been advertising the process for administrator, and the committee begins meeting this week. I think we're going to have those members on our appointments, at least unofficial appointments list. One of the questions, as everyone knows, that's arisen is the issue of the salary range. We initially did not advertise one. Mr. Russell has been advised particularly from people that do the online advertising, that a range will increase the number of viable applicants. So the question is, we need to make a decision on that. We can just leave it as it is, no range. He suggested a range of, I think, 90 to 125. So we need to make a decision. So we have a choice. We can discuss that tonight, make a decision. We can appoint a small group of people to talk about it and make a decision, but we don't have time to process it through committee or wait until next week, because it's got to go on the advertisements if we're going to do it. So in this case, no decision is a decision. So do you all want to talk about it tonight, or just?
I think we'd be foolish not to have a range. I think that's a huge part of the decision-making process, and I feel that range that was recommended by Mike Russell, 90 to 120 or 125,000, is appropriate. And I feel like we'll be looking at the abilities and the experiences of these individuals and make that assessment at a later time. So I think the range needs to go on.
Okay. Mr. Baxter?
I think the actual setting the range, I would question, could we put in there 90 plus? If it said 90 to 125, I'd want the 125 right from the get-go. So is that not a range if it says 90 plus also?
Ms. Jennison?
I kind of agree with Terry, because our range seems to be considerably higher than the position that was just vacated. So,
Well, the low end isn't, but yeah.
well, the low end isn't, but
Right.
the low end is right near where that person was being paid, and then we're just, so.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, Mr. Russell, would something like that 90 plus work?
You certainly give it a try. The conversation I had with the recruiters said the one thing that jumped out at them was that it's clear that we require relocation. Okay, and if there's somebody who is thinking about a situation where they, maybe they're coming from Syracuse, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're coming from Buffalo, maybe they're coming from downstate, and they would be looking at, gee, is $90,000 enough for me to move my family, make a commitment to buy a house? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But they suggested a range of some kind. I know that Mr. Dennison suggested a number, excuse me, that was somewhat less. That works too. But my opinion would be that we had some kind of range. And it doesn't mean that you're limited to that if that was the case, but it shows some flexibility.
Okay. So we can do the, if we want to discuss this in any, and it seems like maybe we do want to discuss it, so perhaps we'll wait later in the agenda. I wasn't sure if there'd be general consensus or not. There seems not to be, so we'll hold off and discuss it later. But good. One thing I want to mention, we heard from CGR tonight, and I wanted to thank the people on that committee who supported the process through. And I've got a list here. I hope I don't leave anyone out, but it was Steve Lynch, Steve Tobin, Kelly Anderson, Joe DeForest, Andy Dennison, Ryan Foley, Ben Vitale, and Paul Pinkney all participated in that process, and I just want to make sure to thank you all for that. Met with the CSEA reps, Terry Hoffman and Josh Kemp, who is the union's occupational safety and health specialist, and they wanted to meet to discuss the cleaner spill, and also the associated odors on the basement and sixth floor, and then to discuss our work with the workplace safety and violence policies. So I'm was really pleased and happy to report that Mr. Kemp, who is the union's, as they say, occupational safety and health person, in relation to the spill, he actually said, and I quote him there, "You did everything right." So I think that's very much, I don't know if Gary's here, but
You're right there in front, Mr. Chairman.
Gary. So that's a real credit to you and your staff. I've been in a lot of union meetings, a lot of health and safety kinds of meetings. I don't remember anyone ever saying you did everything right. In fact, I asked them, I said, what? Actually, I think I did say, did I hear you right? So, kudos to you all. They also reviewed our workplace violence and safety policy, and they had some really good, constructive ideas on that. Nothing substantive, but some good things that we'll be working on. I think Mike's probably already started working on it, that will improve those and make them better in compliance with regulations. So it was a very, very productive, very good meeting. So I think that's my report. Are there any questions? Okay, great.
Regular monthly appointments and reappointments. Cayuga County Traffic Safety Board, Stephen
Fedrizzi.
Okay, Papa Ridge Road, Bennett Center, term 5/1/17 to 12/31/17. It's a new appointment. Tony.
Second.
Okay. Tony Amodi, 151 Dunning Ave, his term 5/18/17 to 12/31/17, also a new appointment.
Was that to do them to both?
Ben, second.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do you want to do
Yeah.
the other ones?
Now
Okay.
stuff.
Cayuga County Administrator Search Committee, the following people will be put on that. The chair will be Mike Russell, then there will be Lee McNabb Coleman, Andy Dennison, Joe DeForest. From the public will be Carmen Cosentino and Ryan Pine.
And then the department heads will select someone tomorrow. So this isn't an appointment as we usually do with signing the book and stuff, but I think it's important that we all acknowledge this group and the work of the group. So if I could have a motion to appoint these people.
Move it.
Mr. Pinckney, thank you. Second? Mr. Kyle, thank you. Any discussion on these people? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, do you want to?
Well, I mean, well,
Okay, thank you.
Communications and announcements.
Mr. Chairman, I waive the reading of the communications and the announcements.
Thank you.
Second.
Anyone want them read? Okay.
Thanks. Unless someone would like to have them read.
So our regular monthly resolutions. Mr. McGann-Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer up 1A, 1B of our regular monthly resolutions for consideration.
Okay,
They've been through committee.
great. Does anyone object doing these together? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take these one at a time. WM1 is approving the 2017-2018 budget for Cayuga Community College. That's been through committee and was passed.
Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go on record of abstaining during this.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the college budget? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, WM2 is authorizing the chair of the legislature to execute a stipulation of settlement in the matter of the Anchor Resort Marina. This was passed at Ways and Means in anticipation of movement with the town board and the assessment review board. And Fred did a great explanation there. So that has since been passed, so we will officially get on board with this. So this has
That was my
technically
question.
been through committee, but it has been resolved, and now it's up to our
Thank you.
consideration.
So are there any questions on this one? Mr. Whitman?
Where do I start? This is in my district. I'm pretty familiar with what's going on with it. I have a lot of concerns with it and where it's ended up. It's a local business. We want to do everything to try and help the local businesses. I'm afraid about stuff like this setting a precedent for the future. This is not the only business in Cayuga County that is not happy with their assessment. or the only property owner in Cayuga County that is not happy with their assessment. Is this going to set a precedent for the future of saying, all I need to do is threaten to sue or sue to get my assessment lowered? I'm also concerned about this saying the local assessors don't know their business, they don't know what they're doing. You know, if we're going to overstep them and say, no, you're wrong, this is what it should be. I know that's not exactly how it's happening or what we're saying. There's an agreement here. But I'm concerned about that as well. Another thing that concerns me, and this may not have anything to do with it, it's just a personal concern of mine, and Fred can stop me if I'm going to overstep anything here. This property has been for sale for a number of years now. And if I'm not mistaken, the sale price is somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 30% over the assessment that they are not happy with. That to me says they think their property is worth more than assessed value. They may not want to pay taxes on that, but they think it's has greater value than what the assessor says it does. Those are my concerns. That being said, I'm probably going to have to vote to go with the resolution because just in the spirit of saving money for the taxpayers. This is already costing the taxpayers of Sterling a lot of money in law fees. Now it's costing the county taxpayers money in fees. I don't know what our return's going to be, you know, if this were to go to trial and we won. Probably going to cost us more. I don't know how Kelly feels about this in her department. I don't know if this is going to set a precedent. I'm open to any rebuttal back from Fred or Kelly, but.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if this is the place to talk about that kind of
No,
policy.
it might not.
But I think you bring a good question, and as I hear the question, because we do this is not unique. This may be the first time it's happened up north in a while, but we had maybe one last month. And the question becomes, and it's a good question, and I think I'm not sure what committee should talk it through, but the question is, should we have a policy on these to kind of go forward as we have, and that policy has been whoever the primary, we take the lead of the primary authority as a rule, and either join them or not join them. But then our policy has been to look at the case and kind of settle if it made sense, not settle if it doesn't make sense. And it usually makes sense, quite frankly, but that's been kind of the approach. Now, we could approach it we could try a thing that, for example, our policy is no, we take everything to court because we're convinced we're right. And there's, that would be and it's worth talking about. What's your committee? Ways and Means? So do you want us to talk about that in Ways and Means? I think it would be a legitimate.
I think it's worth some discussion.
Yeah, so why don't we may refer that for kind of a policy discussion on a larger scale, what we want to do with these kinds of things moving forward. That would be great. So is there any other discussion on this motion? Okay, all in favor then?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, WM3, Mr. Orman made, we discussed this at Ways and Means, and he discussed this issue. We had a prior payment from the wrong party, so this resolution essentially kind of undoes that prior payment, to kind of get everything in order. And we asked the advice of Fred, and we thought this was the best avenue to go to clear up this matter. So this had been through committee and was passed there, so I offer it up for consideration.
Was this through committee?
This was discussed at Ways and Means, yeah.
Okay, but there wasn't a motion? Because this says added?
Yeah, I think we just moved it forward here to here. We didn't really make a
It was
decision.
discussed and moved forward at Ways and Means, but the resolution was developed about 2 days
So
after.
just to be then clean, could you make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion on WM3.
Great.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have motion and second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
WM4 was added 622. We had some discussion about this at Ways and Means. We asked for Mr. Budelman and Mr. Russell to get together to come up with a resolution. This is the resolution. Establishing a policy for the payment of comp time and overtime for the position of confidential secretary, an exempt title under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So this is just added, and it's up for our consideration.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Vitale?
I'd like to make an amendment to the resolution. And in the resolve, it says that that it will continue until a new person is hired in those places. My amendment would be that this sunsets at the end of this fiscal year. In my belief, it'll give all people involved time enough to get through this budget season. It'll give time for people to work out with HR or whoever else they need to work out with to have a plan for next year. But we have a number of confidential secretaries that are in the same, kind of the same position, and I'd like it to be even and fair for everybody involved. So my amendment would be for this to sunset at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Pinckney seconded. And that section, what is it? The paragraph?
It's actually a combination of, in the resolution, resolved, I think B, C, and D address it, and each of those have to be changed just a little bit.
So, do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So then the amendment is that this goes into effect, but it ends at the end, it ends December 31st?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ladman?
I know the government moves pretty fast. I don't want our employees to be penalized because, you know, it takes us longer than expected. Anybody who's due payment, or I'd like to see them get paid, I don't know how to word that, Fred.
I understand that's part of the amendment.
That's what it
Or
is.
not the amendment,
Okay.
that's part of the resolution, right?
Yes, that was discussed in Ways and
Sometimes I
Means
don't
as well.
understand government.
Right.
They're gonna pay?
Yeah.
As long as they pay.
Right.
All right. Oh, I
Ms.
understand.
Dennison?
My only problem with this is just because it has the same name doesn't necessarily mean they do the same amount of work. So the whole fairness thing, I'm struggling with that a little. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all called legislators, do we all do the same amount of work?
Of course.
We get the same pay.
But this is talking about overtime.
Yeah. Mr. Whitman?
I guess I'm struggling with the amendment. I don't have an issue with it, I'm just wondering if it's necessary. Wouldn't anything we come up with as a plan in the future supersede this anyway?
Not in this case.
It wouldn't change it.
Yeah. Mr. Pinckney?
I think it gives the department heads, 5 months to work on this budget and see what they see necessary for the upcoming year. And they can take care of it themselves. So if they're short and they need more positions or more hours, then let them figure that out and bring that to us.
Okay, thank you. See if there's anyone else wants to speak before you speak again. Does anyone else want to speak? Mr. Baxter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you just stated that this wouldn't be reversible. Is that
No, anything's reversible.
right? So,
No, I think that, maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought the question was this: without the amendment, would this reverse itself? And the resolution as it states, as I understand it, would establish this in perpetuity. What the amendment does is it says, look, it ends at the end of the year, and we may continue it based upon what Mr. Pinckney's saying. But that's why I thought was, I may have misunderstood the question.
I guess my question is,
Wait a minute, let me make sure there's no one else who wants to speak before we double back. Mr. Foley?
Yeah, I think one of the main concerns that I had is kind of addressed. So you have a situation in this overall scheme of the problem where you have confidential secretaries from multiple departments. Some of them work 0 overtime, some of them work 310 hours of overtime per year. When this sunsets, none of them will be able to have overtime, and they'll have a base salary. At that point, I think why it's good the sunsets at the end is because the DA can come to us and say he needs to make up those 300 hours somehow to get the work completed into his office. If that requires another position like Legislator Pinckney suggested, then so be it. But that was my initial concern, was that, you know, I mean, Fred has a secretary that's in here that had 188 hours of overtime for 2016. So you would be bringing in new people when this would go down, and some of them would be required to work more hours than others at the same position in different departments for the same pay, which is kind of tough. So I'm glad that this can get worked out, hopefully by the end of the year and during budget time.
I think, Mr. Whitman, you had something else to add?
no, I'm good. I'll just vote no on it.
Ms. Dennison?
So, I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear. At the end of this year, they would get paid for this year, but at the end of this year, it would go away. So if they work...
Yeah, depending on what the department has them bring forward. That's my understanding, right?
Because I'm confused, because like listening to what Ryan just said or whatever, I mean, I'd rather pay somebody a couple hundred hours of overtime than a brand-new position with benefits. It's going to cost us way more than what overtime is. So that's what I'm a little confused about here.
Ms. Vitale?
What this does is gives everybody involved the opportunity to look at the position during budget season and beyond, so that if there's extra hours that there's work that needs to be done, it can even be looked at as maybe another position has to be added, or it can be looked at as that the job needs to be reevaluated as to what the classification in civil service and so on. But it gives everybody involved a good 5 months to work with our HR, work with everybody that needs to make sure in 2018 this isn't another discussion all over again.
I think that this situation we're in now came about because of the FALSA. Got that right? The overtime pay cap was changed. Prior to that, we had paid people in this position overtime for several years, and then we jump when the federal government says something, then they pull it away, we jump back. It took us several months to get to this decision now. Why would we want to make a decision that requires us to make another decision in a few months? If we want to look at this, we can look at it in our budget, but I would say pass this resolution just the way it is, so that the people that have been getting paid for the last 8 years for the work they did will continue to get paid until we come up with a conclusion, not hang in limbo for 3-4 months while we do a budget and figure out what we're going to do.
Okay. Mr. Lattimore?
I'll second Mr. Baxter's motion.
That wasn't a motion.
Anyways, his thought process is correct.
Okay. Thank you. So we ready to vote on the amendment? The amendment in summary would be for it to put this in effect to people would get paid overtime this year, but it would not be, it would end December 31st based upon the department heads coming back with whatever their plan is. So do we need?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. As a legislator, am I able to yield time to other people on the floor?
No.
I'm not.
You are not.
Am I able to hear a department head's discussion or comments on something we are proposing here to get their feedback and.
Yeah, the way the rules work is you are able, as I would understand them, is you're able to ask me to recognize someone.
Uh-huh.
But right now, we're in the middle of a vote, so we're not in the discussion phase. There's a motion on the floor, it's been motioned and seconded, and so I asked people if they wanted to vote. So I understood we were at calling the question. If you don't want to vote, who is it that you would like to be recognized?
I believe that the DA would like to be recognized as part of
No,
this.
I don't want to get in, no. Let me tell you why, John. It's not the thing. I don't want to get into a discussion of individuals, and that's what it is. If this cannot be about an individual person's pay. If we're going to do that, we need to go into executive session. Do you call for an executive session?
I mean, I think that the DA is probably capable of talking about a position and the required amount of time that it takes to meet those qualifications for the position without discussing specifically the person.
It's a person. It's not a position in this case. It's executive, I think it's
It's a
executive session
confidential
material.
secretary in the DA's office, one. And he
It's-
has two separate positions.
If you wish to motion executive session, you may do so, but that's what it would require if we're going to talk about a specific position. Okay. So are we ready to vote on the amendment?
We have a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote.
Yeah, when ready.
This is on the amended.
This is on the amendment,
On the amendment.
sunset clause. Correct?
Yes.
Is that? Yep. Tucker Whitman?
No.
Andy Dennison?
No.
Ben Vitale?
Yes.
Grant Kyle?
Yes.
Paul Pinkney?
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman?
Yes.
Joe DeForest?
Yes.
Terry Baxter?
No.
Joseph Bennett?
No.
Frank Reginelli?
No.
Patrick Mahone is excused. Tim Lattimore?
No.
Michael Didio?
No.
Ryan Foley?
Yes.
Keith Patman?
Yes.
Passed.
Okay, passed.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the motion, or do you want to have more discussion on the motion itself?
Let's vote.
Okay. Does anyone want this or roll call?
Yes.
Okay, roll call on this too, please.
Okay. Tucker Whitman?
Yes.
Ben Vitale?
Yes.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Andy Dennison?
What are we voting on now?
The motion.
Motion is amended.
No.
Ben Vitale?
Yes.
Grant Kyle?
Yes.
Paul Pinkney?
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman?
Yes.
Joe DeForest?
Yes.
Terry Baxter?
No.
Joe Bennett?
No.
Frank Reginelli?
Yes.
Patrick Mahone gets excused. Tim Lattimore?
No.
Michael Didio?
Yes.
Ryan Foley?
Yes.
Keith Batman?
Yes.
Passed.
Passed.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, nothing more for Ways and Means. So Health and Human Services, Mr. Forrest?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present H and H 1 through 3 as a bundle. It's been discussed and approved in committee, and I offer it for consideration.
Does anyone object to bundling these? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Government Operations, Mr. Foley.
Mr. Chair, Government Operations has one resolution that passed in committee. I offer that up tonight.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Planning.
Mr. Chairman, Planning has 8 resolutions before you. PL 5 was revised and discussed and passed at Ways and Means. I'll offer 1 through 8 as a bundle.
Okay, these are bundled 1 through 8. Is there any objection to bundling these? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works.
Mr. Chairman, Public Works has 9 resolutions. They've all been through committees. I would offer them as a bundle.
Does anyone object to this bundle? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Judicial and Public Safety. The,
Mr. Chairman, Judicial and Public Safety has 3 resolutions, and through committee and seek approval. Offers a bundle.
anyone object to the bundle? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
It's okay.
We have 4 legislative resolutions. I never remember who does these in here, the Ways and Means. Okay. So we have we have 4 of these. So Ledge 1 and 2 are fixing days and times for public hearings. Do we need to do those individually? They don't require two-thirds. Okay. So if I may bundle 1 and 2, does anyone object to that? So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Bennett, opposed. Ledge 3 was added. This is calling on the governor to immediately convene a special session of the Assembly and, if necessary, the Senate, to keep said bodies in session until such time as it takes up and passes the home rule messages of all 53 counties relied upon sales tax extenders. Could I have a motion?
Move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Lattimore.
I'd like to have our treasurer, how much does that affect us by not having that legislation passed?
6 million, roughly, I think.
That's 6 million reasons why we should vote for it.
5 million.
5 million?
5-ish, yes.
Okay, it's about 5-ish. I was thinking it was 6 years, but it's about 5. Yeah. Yes, all right, sorry.
Fred, for clarification, at one point you said it was 200,000. Do you know where that figure came from?
That was an erroneous figure. They took the amount of sales tax revenues and took 1% of that instead of taking 25% of the overall revenues. That was a math error.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So, Ledge 4 is motion to authorize the chair to enter into and execute an agreement with CGR to complete the comprehensive organizational assessment for the county and amending the 2017 budget accordingly. I think everyone got a copy of that. Could I have a motion?
Move.
Mr. Baxter, second.
Second.
Ms. McNabb Coleman.
Can see.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Whitman and Ms. Lattimore?
This, to me, I've been here for going on 6 years. It seems to be a classic case of exactly how we shouldn't spend money. $75,000. We could hire a full-time employee for a year to tell us what's going on with our efficiency. And I don't know what's been explored. I don't know if we've approached the college, see if they have any efficiency students that might be interested in doing a study on the county for free, or maybe another college. I think it would be a good case for them to study. I think a lot of us know what the problems are. It's a matter of agreeing on what they are. And they're going to give us a paper with a list that says a lot of what we already know. We have a really hard time with the implementation when it comes to change. I don't feel that this is going to help that. We're still a government. We still are very disorganized. Even when we have it right in front of us, we can't say, let's do it. We'll say, let's do it. It'll take 6 years. And in that 6 years, the path will change 2 or 3 times. And we're almost to that time now. Election's coming up. We're going to agree to spend $75,000 to head in a direction. Who knows how many people in this body are going to turn over? Come after the first of the year, right after they're done with this, I've seen it happen. This will go in a file cabinet somewhere. We'll take off in a different direction. Say, we need to make our departments larger. We need to, and There are so many other things in this county we could spend $75,000 on and actually make a difference. This could go towards the Wasco Lake issues. It could go towards our highway issues. There's just so many issues it could go towards. $75,000 would make a pretty big improvement in this building. We might be able to get an elevator that you don't question whether or not the doors are going to open every time you're on it. I can't support this. I know you guys have put a lot of work into it, that committee, and I do appreciate that, but I can't support these types of expenses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lattimore?
No comment.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes, I find it hard to spend roughly $15,000 a month for this study and stuff, for the input of these people. And just like Tucker says, I feel that, we've had so many different policies presented to us, and they end up being mothballed, and we never apply them. So to me, it's a waste of money, and I will not be supporting it either.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'm already voting in support. I believe that we need to rely on people who are experts, hiring an individual or anything of that nature, or people who are coming in to do things for free who may not have the expertise. It's not an opinion I want to rely on. I want to rely on people who do this every day, and obviously in other counties who are trying to build efficiencies. I think it's necessary if we're looking for long-term solutions with our buildings and what we're going to make next decisions that are much larger numbers than 75,000. It's tens of millions of dollars of where if we're going to fix this building, how we're going to place people, how we're going to make things more efficient. I think this is, the timing's good for this coming up to the next budget season to figure out what we're going to do with our structures and with our staffing and everything. I understand in the past maybe they have been mothballed, but for me, I find it to be an important tool that we need from experts to tell us what they've seen in other places, and we take their opinion or not, but I'd rather have it coming from a group of people rather than from an individual.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dennison?
I'll be supporting it only because I was on the committee and I believe in what this CGR group is talking about, but I also agree with the two gentlemen in the back row, because I mentioned it while on the committee, that unless we actually follow through, we will have wasted money. So I hope to hell we don't.
Thank you. Mr. Lattimore?
Mr. Chairman, if we include the scope as being, looking at how this committee, or how this board works, I would be in favor of it, and see whether or not a county exec would be added to make it more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I don't think we can do that. That would require, that changes the whole scope of it. But it's a good suggestion, though. Maybe we can look at it as we go through this. Anything you want before Ms. Whitman speaks again? Ms. Whitman?
I just wanted to request a roll call.
Okay. We ready to vote then? Roll call, please.
Tucker Whitman?
No.
Andy Dennison?
Yes.
Ben Vitale?
Yes.
Grant Kyle?
Yes.
Paul Pickney?
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman?
Yes.
Joseph DeForest?
Yes.
Terry Baxter?
Yes.
Joseph Bennett?
No.
Frank Reginelli?
Yes.
Patrick Mahon is excused. Tim Lattimore?
No.
Michael Didio?
No.
Brian Foley?
Yes.
Keith Batman?
Yes.
Passed.
Passed.
Put so much into your vote.
So is there any other business to come before the body?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for the one-person plowing and summer hours for the highway department agreement that we have come up with the union.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Whitman?
It's the last one. Got to say something. I just hope somebody's taking notes. We've been down this road before. It didn't work. we're heading back down it. So I just hope we're keeping track so that when we're going back down this path in a couple of years, we can say, why did we do this again? I hope we got all the data.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett,
Roll call vote, please.
are we ready to vote? Does anyone have any more comments? Okay, roll call?
Yes. Tucker Whitman,
No.
Andy Dennison,
Yes.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Grant Kyle,
Yes.
Paul Pickney,
Yes.
Aileen McDabb Coleman,
Yes.
Joseph DeForest,
Yes.
Terry Baxter,
Yes.
Joseph Bennett,
No.
Frank Reginelli,
Yes.
Patrick Mahonis excused, Timothy Lattimore, Tim,
Oh, there's a lot of chatter.
Yes.
Michael Didio,
No.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Batman.
Yes.
Passed. Passed.
Okay, now, is there any other business? Is there some more business here?
No.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor?
We'll see. You know, I went to a place where